Hello students, I am Dr. Shumaila from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today I am going to speak on the module Mass Communication in Field Research from the paper Research Methods and Fieldwork. So the learning objective of this module are to be able to understand the difference between mass communication and mass media, to learn various objectives of anthropology of media, to be able to identify the differences between the different writing styles in anthropology when writing for anthropology of media, and to see how this interdisciplinary field is dynamic, what are the new terminologies being incorporated, and why should any student of anthropology never ignore communication media. So let's start with a brief introduction to mass communication. Communication is a word used to refer to a multitude of activities in which people engage, such as talking, touching, writing, looking, etc. So communication study thus involves who say what, through what channels of communication, to whom, and what will be the results. So Littlejohn and Foss in 2005 defined mass communication as the process whereby media organizations produce and transmit messages to large publics, and the process by which those messages are sought, used and consumed by audiences. McQuell in 1994 states that mass communication is only one of the processes of communication operating at the society-wide level, readily identified by its institutional characteristics. Hence, mass communication is the process by which a person, group of people or large organization creates a message and transmits it through some type of medium to a large anonymous heterogeneous audience. The term mass communication was coined along with that of mass media early in the 20th century to describe what was then a new social phenomena and a key feature of the emerging modern world that was being built on the foundation of industrialism and popular democracy. The mass media refers to the organized means of communicating openly at a distance and to many in a short space of time. Now let's discuss what is anthropology of media and its history. Media anthropology is a new field of interdisciplinary studies and is the point of contact for the fields of anthropology and communications. So it represents both the use of anthropological concepts and methods within media studies and the study of media by anthropologists. So media has become ubiquitous worldwide, and hence anthropologists encounters it in their work more often today. Arjun Appadurai invented the concept of media escapes in his article in 1921 subtitled Notes and Queries for a Transnational Anthropology. Ginsberg et al. In 2003 were of the opinion that for many years mass media was seen as almost a taboo topic for anthropology. Anthropologists have either not been interested in mass media or have reduced it to simple work tool for an accurate recording of social facts or to an accessory in the study of other social and cultural phenomena. Today, anthropologists recognize the social cultural significance of films, television, video, radio, and the new media as a part of everyday life in many parts of the world. So, three prominent scholars who have dealt with the questions of the relationship between mass communication and anthropology are Dickey, Sputulink, and Iselin. So Dickey defines mass media as communications media that are or can be widely distributed in virtually identical form, including not only film, video, television, radio and print periodicals, but lithographic prints, advertising billboards and the World Wide Web. On the other hand, Aislin's definition of communication media is the mechanical amplification of communication to transcend geographic or temporal barriers. He thinks that among non-industrial societies, media are found in the form of petroglyphs, artwork, smoke signals, and signal drums. On the other hand, Ispitul argues that the mass media are at once artifacts, experiences, practices, and processes. So they are economically and politically driven, linked to developments in science and technology, and bound by with the use of language. Because of these broad characteristics, she says anthropology can approach mass media as institutions, workplaces, communicative practices, cultural products, social activities, aesthetic forms, and as historical developments. From the above definition, it appears that mass communication did not appear after industrialization, but was a part of the pre-industrialization society. Hence, if anthropology is the scientific study of humans, past and present, that draws and builds upon knowledge from the social sciences, life sciences, and humanities, then is not it natural for anthropologists to also study mass communication? Let's pour some light on how anthropology of media grows over the years. Since the early 1980s, new terms have been added to the lexicon of the anthropologists working in the field of media. Cultural Activism by Faye Ginsberg, on how indigenous and minority peoples have begun to take up a range of media in order to talk back to structures of power that have erased or distorted their interests and realities. She is one of the opinion that the activism is to underscore the sense of both political agency and cultural interventions that people bring to these efforts, parts of a spectrum of practices of self-conscious mediation and mobilization of culture that took particular shape beginning in the late 20th century. The activist imagery coined by George Marcus is to describe how subaltern groups turn to film, video, and other media not only to pursue traditional goals of broad-based social change through a politics of identity and representation, but also out of a utopian desire for emancipator projects, raising fresh issues about citizenship and the shape of public spheres within the frame and terms of traditional discourse on polity and civil society. Then there is the concept of parallel maternities of Brian Larkin, a trope used in his study of media in northern Nigeria to describe the words of those who are not mobile but who nonetheless through media participate in the imagined realities of other cultures as part of their daily lives through media. So now let's talk about the objectives of anthropology of mass communication. As Ginsberg et al. Articulate, the anthropology of media emerged from a particular historical and theoretical conjuncture. The ruptures in anthropology's theories and methodologies of the 1980s and 1990s, and the development of an anthropology of present that engages, and analyzes the transformations of the past half century in which media has played a prominent part. For example, Sarah Dickey, in her study on significance for the urban poor of Tamil popular cinema, did ethnography of media to include producers and audiences as well as intertextual sources through which meaning was constituted. Tamil popular cinema is an industry that has a remarkable influence in the creation of political celebrity in South India. Part of a vast system of popular literature, greeting cards and posters, clothing, fashions, gossip, legends, memories, and activities supporting the stars. Daniel Miller was one of the following opinion regarding the growing use of media more generally. These new technologies of objections such as film, video and television create new possibilities of understanding at the same moment that they pose new threats of alienation and rupture. Yet our first concern is not to resolve these contradictions in theory, but to observe how people sometimes resolve or more commonly live out these contradictions in local practice. Similarly, Anderson perceives nations are imagined communities. Then it is natural to recognize that media, from the novels and newspaper, television, broadcasts and video cultures, would play a crucial role in producing nations and shaping national imaginaries. For example, analyzes the ways that radio helped create the post-colonial nation in Zambia by formalizing language hierarchies in a multilingual state, influencing speech styles, signifying modernity itself, and even embodying the state. Similarly, Mankekar talks about how a popular television serial, Ramayan, might have participated in reconfiguration of nation, culture and community that overlapped with the and reinforced Hindu nationalism in the early 90s. So then there is the media circulation across national boundaries like the McLagan study on the contemporary use of Western media for the representation of cultural differences meant to mobilize support for a political cause, as in the case of the Tibetans. Let's discuss some contributions anthropology of media has made. Mark R. Peterson has suggested that media anthropology has three main contributions to make. First is thick ethnographies. In contrast to other media scholars, media anthropologists conduct relatively extended open-ended fieldwork in which media artifacts and practices are but one part of the social worlds under study. Secondly, decentered West. Media anthropologists are as likely to work in remote corners of the global south as they are in metropolitan areas of Europe or North America. This wide geographical scope allows them to broaden the media research agenda from its traditional North Atlantic heartland. Alternative theories. Media anthropologists bring to the study of media a long disciplinary history of grappling with socio-cultural complexity through theories of exchange, social formations and cultural forms. This theoretical expertise, argues Peterson, can help the field to finally leave behind the simple models of communication that dominated its earlier history. So what kind of writings we use in anthropology of media? The writing process remains the same as are in the prevalent moves in anthropology. The student's guide to reading and writing in social anthropology from Department of Anthropology, Harvard University State. When it comes to writing papers for social anthropology courses, the general principles of good expository writing, using and attributing sources appropriately, motivating and developing an argument, and crafting an effective organizational structure still apply. Too often, however, student writers expend their writing energies on the conventional elements, and easy is supposed to contain introduction, thesis statement, body, and conclusion, and lose sight of what they intend these elements to do. In his helpful book entitled Rewriting Composition, scholar Joseph Harris suggests paying attention to writing moves, textual strategies that authors employ to engage with ideas and to move them in new directions. So, as a way for students to improve their own reading and writing practices, it goes on to elucidate the characteristic writings moves in anthropology, that is, entering a conversation. This is the term for the work of establishing a context and motivation for your ideas. More than simply a statement of your topic, entering a conversation entails letting the reader know which intellectual conversation you propose to join and what contributions you hope to make. For example, in his paper Visual Media and the Primitivist Perplex, Colonial Fantasies, Indigenous Imagination and Advocacy in North America, Prince writes, striking images of tawny humans collaged with soaring eagles and some other form of wildlife, aesthetically photographed against a backdrop of pristine wilderness. Such imagery is standard fare in visual representation of indigenous peoples. Borrowing and extending, anthropologists often borrow and adapt key terms and concepts from a variety of disciplines and intellectual frameworks. For example, Turner, in his article Representation, Politics and Cultural Imagination in Indigenous Video Journal, points and Kayapo examples from Anthropology Today writes, Faye Ginsburg has noted that the appropriation of visual media by indigenous people typically occurs in the context of movements for self-determination and resistance, and that their use of video cameras tend to be both assertive and conservative of identity, focusing both on the documentation of conflicts with or claims against the national society and the recording of traditional culture. She makes the important point that indigenous culture self-documentation tends to focus not on the retrieval of an idealized vision of pre-contact culture, but on processes of identity constructions in the culture presents. So, what's establishing authority? Anthropologists employ a diverse range of textual strategies to establish themselves as credible authorities on their respective subjects. These strategies include displaying a command of the relevant scholarship, explaining one's own positioning vis-a-vis the subjects of one's research, or piggybacking upon another scholar's previously established authority. But perhaps the most distinctly anthropological technique for establishing authority consists of describing and elaborating upon unique observations made in the field. For example, in his paper Spectacles of Different Cultural Activism and the Mass Mediation of Tibet, McLagan writes, recently a friend of mine gave me a photograph taken in the 66th Street subway station on the west side of Manhattan. Someone had spray painted Free Dairy and below it Free Tibet on the wall. graphically linking these two modern-day anti-colonial liberation struggles on different sides of the globe. But at the same time, I remember an advertisement I had seen around the city publicizing freephone.com's free long distance calling over the internet, which contained the phrase Free Tibet in large white letters against a black background and the suggestion call your best friend in Lhasa for free while he still has the oxygen to talk. Above this, a cartoon of a multiply pierced hipster mouthing the word yak. These two images reveal a movement pinned between two opposing and at times complementary processes, politicization and commodification. Countering. To counter is not only to criticize, although a well-informed critic of another's work may certainly form part of it. The true purpose of countering, however, is to enhance your reader's understanding of a topic by identifying and addressing weaknesses in how it has been previously understood. For example, from the author's PhD thesis on marginalization, mobile telephony, and consumption of new media, Herbert Marshall McLuhan, a Canadian philosopher of communication theory, in his 1964 statement said, all technology is communication, an extension of ourselves that allows us to reach further through time or space. The sacrifice we make for this enhancement is an unnoticed automation that, combined with an narcissistic desire and a bit of virtual phantom limb syndrome, forces us to both marvel at our feat and simultaneously experience strong senses of detachment and eventually conflict. So every new technology necessitates a new war. So stepping back. This move entails just what its name suggests. Stepping back from the particularities of a case study or research topic in order to establish its overall significance. This move is often flagged by phrases such as in some, argue that, or in this paper I have examined. For example, Wilk from his paper Television, Time and the National Imaginary in Belize, which is a revision of his two previously published paper notes. If we liken Belizeans to voyeurs watching North America through an electronic peephole, we find they are united both by their common knowledge of what goes on in the US and by their shared experience of voyeurism. So while Belizeans may make different moral judgment about what is good and bad on television, they share a common language when they debate those moral issues. Country remains highly factionalized and divided by politics, ethnicity and class. But television discourse and debate have changed existing social divisions and the alignment of factions. For example, religious organizations that used to have a very close relationship with political conservatives now find themselves sharing important common ground with the left. Both are concerned about the danger of foreign television. The Baptist minister and the nationalist student have a shared agenda, the control of foreign influence. The old nationalist program of building local cultural institutions now finds a much broader constituency, and Belizean cultural production of all kinds receives broad support. Bill qualifies his claim about social effects of foreign content being watched by Belizeans that of bringing some sort of unity of a fractured society. So why study media is so important? Studying media for anthropologists is important because, as Abu Lughod has argued, it forces us to represent people in distant villages as part of the same cultural worlds we inhabited, world of mass media, consumption, and disparate communities of the imagination. Now let's summarize what we have gone through in this module so far. Communication study involves who says what, through what channel of communication, to whom, and what will be the result. The term mass communication was coined along with that of mass media early in the 20th century. Mass media refers to the organized means of communicating openly at a distance and to many in a short space of time. Media anthropology is a new field of interdisciplinary studies and is a point of contact for the field of anthropology and communications. Ginsberg was one of the opinion that for many years mass media was seen as almost a taboo topic for anthropology. Today, anthropologists recognize the social cultural significance of films, television, video, radio, and the new media as a part of everyday life in many parts of the world. Media anthropology is defined as the application of instruments from the field of science, cultural anthropology onto an investigated object. In this case, media, that is communication mediated by technologies and institutions, be it mass or group, big or small. Mark Peterson has suggested that media anthropology has three main contributions to make: thick ethnographies, decentered West, and alternative theories. The writing process remains the same as are the prevalent moves in ethnography. Characteristic writings moves in anthropology are entering a conversation, borrowing and extending, establishing authority, countering, and stepping back. Thank you.